Coming up on Nuestra Voz Today, a young man tried to improve the lives of teenagers in Honduras, but was forced to flee.
Jovin had left Honduras because he was receiving threats after witnessing a murder.
A year after the U.S. deported him, he was killed by the people he fled. Find out why for many Central American migrants, a legitimate fear of death doesn't always matter in the U.S. asylum system.
Plus, Fernando Mania, 40 years later. We'll take an in-depth look at how star pitcher Fernando Valenzuela impacted the Dodgers, Major League Baseball, and Latinos in Los Angeles.
Also, a San Diego artist is handpicked to paint this gigantic mural to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. Why she chose this location and why it won't be hard for people to see.
And why Selena's legacy lives on more than 26 years after her death. Hi everyone, I'm Paola Hernández-Jiao.
And I'm Luis Cruz. Thank you for joining us for Nuestra Voz Today, presented by the San Diego Union-Tribune and the Los Angeles Times.
We begin with the dangerous journey of Central American migrants seeking asylum. Many get deported without ever getting a chance to apply for help.
San Diego Union-Tribune immigration reporter Kate Morrissey traveled to Central America to learn about the grave conditions which are causing many asylum seekers to leave their home in search for a better life here in the U.S.
Jovin Estrada Villanueva was one of thousands of Hondurans who came to the United States in recent years to ask for asylum. He was denied protection and deported, and then he was killed by the people he fled. We went to Honduras to understand how something like that could happen in a system meant to protect the world's most vulnerable. Jovin had left Honduras because he was receiving threats after witnessing a murder. After he returned, those threats came back. He was shot while driving his mototaxi through an area contested by multiple gangs. Like Jovin, most Honduran asylum seekers lose their cases and are ordered deported. Cases related to gang violence are particularly difficult to win because of the way the U.S. government generally interprets asylum law. We don't know how many deported asylum seekers have been killed. But in Honduras, stories like Jovin's are really common, especially in neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. Jovin is from Choloma, a city just outside San Pedro Sula. Over the past few decades, his neighborhood has grown haphazardly and with little civic planning because many people moved to the region to work in nearby clothing factories. Even today, there is a severe lack of social services. People who live there have little access to electricity and potable water. Roads are unpaved and difficult to navigate. There aren't enough teachers for schools, and access to childcare is all but non-existent. In many ways, neighborhoods like Jovin's feel abandoned by the government. And in the government's absence, gangs have moved in to claim territory. For Jovin and his friends, refuge came in the form of hip-hop. Jovin was known as B-Boy Ross 1. He was a dancer and mentor to many in the country's growing hip-hop scene.
Jovin era un activista hip hop, era un joven que motivaba el cambio y todo esto, aunque parezca increíble, como yo le digo a muchas personas, era a través del baile. Que cualquiera puede decir de que el baile solo es una forma de entretenerse, pero él y nosotros nunca lo vimos como una simple forma de entretenerse, sino que es algo que nos ayuda a trascender la conciencia, a volvernos fuertes porque nos une, el baile nos une, el hip hop nos une.
It's not surprising to see hip hop resonating in Honduras when you consider its origins. Hip-hop was born in the South Bronx in the 1970s. People who lived there, who were mostly Black and Latino, were also facing government abandonment and gang takeovers. They also faced aggressive over-policing. You were assumed to be a criminal just for living there, criminalized for being poor and a person of color. The same can be said today for people who live in many neighborhoods around San Pedro Sula. A youth movement grew out of these conditions in the Bronx. These young people who had been left to fend for themselves dared to say, "My existence matters, I matter, we matter." And that was the beginning of hip-hop.
Y es justamente en ese contexto donde también viene a nacer aquí el hip hop. Viene esa semilla del hip hop aquí a Chamelecón y da esa oportunidad que no había.
Mira cómo lo hago porque sabes paranoia. Cada vez que vengo haciendo un estilo que suena en olla. Quieres competir conmigo y te doy paranoia. Ya acabó tu tiempo, pasaste a hacer historia.
Jovin was at the center of that youth movement in Honduras, and his death rippled through the entire country's hip-hop community.
Cuando me mandaron a mí la noticia pues, de que había sido asesinado, de que habían acribillado a un mototaxista, así decía la prensa, ¿verdad? Pero yo digo, él no era solo un mototaxista, sino que era un joven que motivaba el cambio. Y él era de los que creían que lo que hacemos los hombres también lo pueden hacer las mujeres.
Jovin was known for teaching B-girls in particular. That's not common in breaking globally. B-girls often face discrimination, so the fact that Jovin really took the time to encourage and train women is significant. One of his students, Jency Fresh, is now one of the best B-girls in Central America. She remembers the way that her mentor used to encourage young people to join their practices to keep them away from the gangs.
Cuando veas a una persona bailando, es un delincuente menos, porque aunque no lo creas, el baile te aparta, te ocupa tu mente y aparte de eso es saludable para tu vida. O sea, haces un ejercicio que te va a ayudar mucho en tu vida. Entonces, yo siempre decía eso. El día 8 de agosto, cuando pasó, estaba específicamente en este lugar, porque iba a entrenar, como ya mencionado, él iba a venir a entrenar con nosotros. Cuando recibí la llamada, yo dije, ¿aló? Y me dice, ¿te diste cuenta? Asesinaron a Jovin. En ese momento se me aflojó todo mi cuerpo, caí al suelo, no podía respirar, me había quedado así paralizada. Yo dije, no, pero qué imposible. Pero fue muy duro para nosotros.
Shortly after Jovin was killed, 3 more mototaxi drivers were killed in the same area. The transportation industry is extremely vulnerable to gang extortion because it's an all-cash business. Jovin's family also took us to see his grave. They were afraid to be fully identified because of what happened to him. The family is still so full of grief. They moved away after Jovin's death, but they've filled the walls of their new home with memories of him.
Aquí en Honduras, el gobierno de Honduras no le garantizó sus derechos al trabajo, su derecho a la cultura, a la libre expresión. Fue a Estados Unidos a pedir apoyo y tampoco lo ayudaron allá, sino que lo regresaron acá. Y estando acá, el Estado de Honduras nuevamente fue incapaz de garantizar el derecho a la vida.
To read Kate Morrissey's comprehensive series on the U.S. asylum system, log on to SanDiegoUnion-Tribune.com/returned. There you'll find an interactive experience that enables you to walk through the asylum process for yourself. You'll see how the decisions you make can impact your case.
Coming up, Fernando Valenzuela opened doors for ball players around the globe and left a lasting impact on LA and the Latino community 40 years ago. We'll take a look at Valenzuela's influence and legacy when Nuestra Voz Today returns.
San Diegans accomplish great things every day. We care about our neighbors and our community. We are proud of our diversity. We are resilient. We hold our leaders accountable. We live in one of the most dynamic cities in America, the San Diego Union-Tribune, telling San Diego's story for more than 150 years.
Welcome back to Nuestra Voz Today. Over the course of the baseball season, the Los Angeles Times will present Fernando Mania at 40. The video series will recount Fernando Valenzuela's incredible rookie season.
The series will also relive the perfect storm in Los Angeles that had been building for decades that set the stage for Valenzuela's impossible rise. LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano gives us a preview of Fernando Mania at 40.
Now we know, 40 years later, that people like Fernando come at certain times in baseball history.
He was an immigrant like many of the members of our families. He's not just a symbol to the Latino community, but he's a great pitcher.
Like Jackie Robinson, Fernando broke a glass ceiling.
Jerry Royce had been named the opening day starter for the Dodgers in 1981, but when he turned an ankle late in spring training, manager Tommy Lasorda turned to a 20-year-old rookie from Mexico, from Sonora. Fernando Valenzuela made it look easy. He shut out the Houston Astros on 5 hits, 2-0. On this day, April 9, 1981, Fernando Mania was born. In the press, the stands, in Chavez Ravine, and all over Los Angeles. 1981 was a magical season for the lefty. He won the National League Cy Young Award and the Rookie of the Year, and helped the Dodgers beat the New York Yankees in the World Series 4-2. Fernando's impact on the Dodgers was huge, but that impact extended far beyond baseball. LA Latinos had someone to root for, finally, a reflection of themselves, and help them forget, or at least forgive a little bit, the events of 3 decades earlier. Back then, members of the communities of Palo Verde, Bishop, and La Loma, just north of downtown in Chavez Ravine, were forced from their homes. This happened after the government declared eminent domain in order to build public housing. The plan failed, but a few years later, that land was used as bait to bring the Brooklyn Dodgers into Los Angeles. Over the course of the 2021 baseball season, the Los Angeles Times will present Fernando Mania at 40.
The Dodgers came across as big robber barons. They took over this land, and the stories of families being pushed out of their homes and a lot of bad stuff kept coming up.
To me, it was just a big black eye in society, and it caused a lot of pain. Because of that, a lot of the Mexican Americans, they said, hey, forget the Dodgers, we're done. We're not gonna go. We're never gonna step a foot in the new stadium.
When Mr. Walter Murray came to Los Angeles, he used to tell us, Jaime, when are you going to find and give us a Mexican Sandy Koufax? And I used to tell Mr. Murray, it's impossible to find another Koufax, not only in Mexico, any Latin country. So he wanted to have, he realized that it was very, very important to please the Mexican community in Southern California.
All of a sudden, along comes Fernando right out of the blue, just changed everything.
When Fernando hit, it was just like, oh my God.
Here he is, man. Here's a Mexicano. Everybody loves a hero. Everybody wants to have a hero. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron. I mean, everybody wants to be the fan of somebody. And especially if he's of your racial background, my God, vámonos, viva la raza, So that's what Fernando brought. He brought an awareness and made us a little bit more prideful.
He made the Dodgers seem more relevant to all communities. It was easier to forget about people being shoved out of their homes when Fernando was winning games. That's a very shallow statement, but I think it's true.
Fernando was really key in bringing the hearts and minds of La Raza back to the stadium, or to the stadium, really for the first time.
When Fernando made it big, a lot of that, the guilt, a lot of that anger kind of dissipated, and people start coming back to Chavez Ravine.
Fernando Mania just exploded. I mean, all of a sudden, everybody had to be at the Dodgers when Fernando wherever he traveled throughout the United States.
It became, you had to go to the game. And literally, when the police would stop you, if Fernando was playing, they wouldn't say, "What are you doing?" They go, "Why aren't you at the park?" You know, because you were doing something wrong if you weren't at the baseball park.
It was like watching midnight mass on Christmas Eve, or, you know, it's hushed, sit, nobody talk, nobody move. Today we're pulling for the Mexican with Dodger blue on. But Dad, we have our Giants hats on. Shut up, put those away.
It was quite a vibe, okay? I remember my aunt, my tia Felipa, who loved the Dodgers and loved baseball, and she would always tune in to the Spanish language radio and then watch it on TV. She was so excited about Fernando. And I think that that's the same kind of sense and feeling that everyone had in the community. It was just an abundance of pride and a sense of feeling like he was part of your family.
When Fernando was pitching, was sold out. Then at home, I know that ladies, especially mothers and grandmothers, started praying and praying the rosary because Fernando was pitching that day. So he became God, really, in Southern California. It was unbelievable.
I remember driving home from rehearsal one evening, right? And the Dodgers are playing. I remember turning on my block, my windows are down, and you could hear every TV. You could hear the TVs. Everybody's on Channel 11, I believe it was, watching the Dodgers play, whoever it was. And you could just hear, you know, this enthusiasm of people, because Fernando was pitching.
I always loved the wind-up. When he was looking at the sky, he was looking at the heavens, at God for inspiration, for that little bit extra kick.
You are now there to see one person, the person that reflects you, right? The person that speaks for you in some way, right? There's something I think always about sports that has a character who is subversive, right? He's going to flip the whole script on what you've known or what you believe this sport to be. And this one seems more extreme because he's not tall, he's not blonde, he's not, you know, he's not Steve Garvey, right?
He was chubby. And, you know, in Spanish we say gordito. He was a chubby guy, and the people could relate to him. I mean, he wasn't cut up, you know, and, weightlifter, athlete's body. He was a gordito, just like everybody else in East LA.
We really didn't know anything about him, and we wouldn't for years and years afterwards, because he didn't speak English. It was, you know, he was the kind of thing, you know, it was just what you saw was what you got, but what you saw was just sensational.
Even a 19-year-old, you gotta be impressed with Fernando, that age, that composed he had at the mound. At that time, Fernando looked like he was in the major league for about 10 years, the way he handled himself.
It was a phenomenon unlike anything that I had seen up until that time. And even though pitchers from other countries came in and there was a lot of attention put to them, I don't think it had quite the same impact as it did in 1981 with Fernando. It was the right person, the right time with the right story, and everything seemed to break to present a whole new era of Los Angeles baseball.
There was an optimism, hope, and energy around that I think excited folks. The fact that, like Jackie Robinson, he also played at a very high level, kind of demonstrated to people, hey, there's talent in many communities.
When Fernando was with us, he's never gotten the credit that he deserves for the impact he made on baseball, not just on the Dodger organization, but on Mexican baseball, international baseball, the community.
I believe that Fernando will always be a hero to the Mexican-American community. People love him. To this day, they love him.
It's an LA story. I honestly believe that it's part of the history of Los Angeles. That's the impact that he had, not just on the Latino community, you know, but on Los Angeles. When he came in, he was like the guy.
So all of a sudden you have this sports figure who's not just a sports figure, he's a symbol of how you endure.
To learn more about Valenzuela's legacy and to watch new installments of Fernando Mania at 40, make sure to log on to latimes.com/Fernando Mania throughout the baseball season.
No, I loved watching Fernando Valenzuela pitching growing up. I can't wait for the rest of Fernando Mania at 40. I have a feeling it's going to be really good.
Very exciting. Coming up, we'll introduce you to a local artist who is raising awareness and compassion through her work during the COVID-19 pandemic. Nuestra Voz Today will be right back.
The search to solve our most pressing issues. How to endure, and how to be redeemed. The world is watching California, because California fights back, remembers where we're from, and defies those in our way. Los Angeles Times, the state of what's next.
San Diego artist Tatiana Ortiz Rubio is bringing more color to Barrio Logan thanks to this mural installation on the silo of Bread and Salt Gallery.
San Diego Union-Tribune lead photojournalist Alejandro Tamayo introduces us to Ortiz Rubio and the meaning behind this impressive mural.
I'm Tatiana Ortiz Rubio and I'm a visual artist. So this mural is a mural to raise awareness and stop the spread of COVID. It has two meanings. The first is to raise awareness of how we are responsible for each other during these times, and covering our nose and mouth is an act of love to each other. The second meaning is a memorial for those that we have lost, and so it stands here to honor these people. This initiative, the Stop the Spread, is funded by the state. They've hired, I believe, 14 artists across the state to create artworks that can help raise awareness about COVID safety. And I think it's a wonderful way of communicating because art has a way of allowing people to experience something. Well, I was free to choose my own site, and I decided to choose this area because I know that the Latin American community has been the hardest hit. And so while driving around, I kept looking at the tower of Bread and Salt Gallery because it's so visible. And so I had already shown my work here, and I thought it'd be great to just approach the owners and ask them permission, and they were very excited to be a part of this.
The thing that I love most about this piece is that it's a twofold piece. So what you see now, like this woman trying to breathe, you know, but her face, her mouth, and nose sort of covered with these flowers. Once the pandemic lifts and like things are really returning to normal, Tatiana's gonna go in and modify this mural and like kind of represent that like inhalation of breath and like taking the next step as a society, opening things up again.
I chose the cempasúchil flower because it connects to the Mexican and Latin American community. We use it for the Day of the Dead to remember those we've lost and honor them. And I thought it was a great connection to the community here since it's one of the most hard hit in San Diego. I would love to organize on the Day of the Dead here in November an altar for the community and anyone in San Diego that'd like to participate.
This mural measures 40 feet by 30 feet and is visible from Interstate 5 and the Coronado Bridge.
For more information on Ortiz Rubio, visit TatianaOrtizRubio.com or follow her on Instagram at Tatiana_Ortiz Rubio.
Still ahead, more than 26 years since her death, why Selena Quintanilla continues to be larger than life. Nuestra Voz Today will be right back.
There is still this lack of understanding that LGBTQ Americans are still not equal citizens in this country. We still don't have equal protection. My name is Fernando Lopez. I use they, them, their pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of San Diego Pride. We have a diversity of programs that really find different unique ways to center and uplift our community, create visibility, and advocate for our right to exist and be treated equally under the law. Every day that we can create visibility, showcase the lives and stories of our community members is important. The Union-Tribune has been exceptional in the last year in telling the truth about our community, in showcasing our real lived experiences, and I couldn't value that more. I see the UT telling the authentic stories of our community in ways that I never have before, and that gives me hope and tells me why folks can subscribe to the Union-Tribune. I'm passionate about social justice, and I know we're resilient, and I know we're going to make it through, and the road ahead is just that much brighter than what we've been through.
Selena Quintanilla, the queen of Tex-Mex music, would have turned 50 in April had she still been alive.
San Diego Union-Tribune reporter Andrea Lopez Villafaña shows us why the Mexican-American cultural icon is still remembered and revered for her legacy, especially for what she meant to the Latino community.
Selena Quintanilla was larger than life. The late Tejano artist was a Grammy Award-winning musician who broke barriers in a male-dominated genre. Not only that, her music appealed to both English and Spanish-speaking audiences. Selena was at the height of her career in the 90s, when sadly she was murdered. But still, her music resonates with so many fans, and she's become a cultural icon.
She is, one of the very few Mexican-American international pop stars that are out there. Her story is almost like a Disney, princess story, the kind of rags to riches. She was a person, they called her, Selena del Barrio. She was with the neighborhood, and she was very humble. A lot of Spanish-speaking people use the word amable to describe her.
Sonny Lopez Chavez, an artist in Barrio Logan, often uses images of Selena in her art. She recently completed this mural to honor Selena.
She's amazing. To me, she is a definition of an icon. She's inspired me throughout my entire life, really. So I've always wanted to paint Selena, and I was approached by a friend to paint a mural of her in North Park, and I thought, well, I would really love to paint it where I live, in Barrio Logan, where I feel like more people are gonna feel connected with it. So I thought, you know what, let me do it in 2021. I really tried to push to get it done before her birthday. Well, I grew up listening to her music, and I remember when she passed, that was the very first time that I ever saw my parents sad. So that really attracted me to this person. And as I grew up, I started to learn a little bit more about her life, and a lot of things I felt connected with, like being, Mexican American. She was able to balance that in a very respectful and celebrating way, and I also would like to do that with my culture.
Selena's iconic looks inspired Lady Blanca, a drag queen in San Diego, who recently began dressing up as the artist for shows.
I've been doing drag for 2 years now, and by women. So I've always wanted to do female impersonations and delve into pretty much the world of women from an outside perspective. I've been doing drag for 2 years now, and yeah, most of my inspiration has been from my mom. Selena means having a creative mind and being able to express it through any medium, as she used to, have her own fashion creatives, her own singing, songwriting. Pretty much she was a whole artist.
She's somebody who represents being Mexican-American, right? She's ni de aquí ni de allá. She's not from here nor from there. She's that kind of person that's in the borderlands, that person that's in between, the person that we can use as an identity.
And we're told this mural of Selena is the only mural of Selena in San Diego, and it's right here in Barrio Logan. And I have to admit, I listen to Selena's music all the time.
So do I. I love her music, and it's a lot of fun to dance to. And you can watch Andrea Lopez Villafaña's full video report by logging on to SanDiegoUnionTribune.com, and you can read more about Selena at SanDiegoUnionTribune.com and LATimes.com.
Before we go, we want to invite you to sign up for the LA Times Latinx Files newsletter, written by our friend, audience engagement editor Fidel Martinez. The weekly newsletter is dedicated entirely to the American Latinx experience. Sign up at latimes.com/newsletters.
Also, stay up to date on the latest news with the newsletters offered by the San Diego Union-Tribune at sandiegouniontribune.com/newsletters.
That does it for this edition of Nuestra Voz Today. Thank you so much for watching.
Hasta la próxima.